Chapter 2 Agron. Meanwhile, on another planet, there lived a dragonborn, half man, half dragon, named Agron. And although Agron was a young man with a future ahead of him, he looked with sore eyes as the days went on. He watched day after day as the war between the Americans and the Zalshurans ravaged his land and left nothing but isolation in its path. He watched as Zalshuran soldiers went through his village one day and then came back in pieces a few days later. He would then brood, thinking, when will this ever end? Why must we suffer for someone else's wrongdoing? As Agron brooded over these things, his dragon mother came to him and gently held him and whispered into his ear the lullaby of his youth. He would then visit his father's shallow grave on one knee and say with a tear in his eye, "For as long as I live, I promise I will live the life you failed to give me. I won't give up as long as I live." As he ventured outside the village with his companion Tatsu, he would stare at the iron curtain miles away that separated his homeland from the Americans. He would stare at the iron curtain for hours, wondering what was on the other side, as vandals would paint graffiti all over it. Tatsu would then say with a smile on her dragon face, "I've always wondered what's beyond the wall. Too bad I won't have wings to fly." As Agron had traveled with Tatsu throughout his homeland, he couldn't help but notice all the Zalshuran flags raised over what were once grand palaces to the former king and queen of his kingdom. As he walked by one palace, he clenched his fist as he heard a Zalshuran commander say before an attentive crowd of peasants, "Through our righteous might and superior culture, we have thrown down the monarchs that have oppressed us. Now they shall pay the price of their sins under the mighty hand of Zalshura." He watched with disgust as the Zalshuran military threw the former flags of his kingdom on the ground and burned them for all the kingdom loyalists to see. And as the Zalshuran military was burning flags and erecting their own, peasants were burning the king and queen's luxury items and gambling for their gold. Then the Zalshuran military paraded the former king and queen in chains and rags with their golden crowns as loyalists fell on their faces, and a vast number of peasants with torches and pitchforks cheering, mocking, "Long live the king and queen whom Zalshura freed us." Months went by since the day Zalshura annexed Agron's kingdom, and it was the beginning of Agron's formal education. It was also a warm 2096 summer morning in Agron's home village as he woke up to his Zalshuran air raid siren test. Then as he rolled out of bed, he groaned, "Morning already?" Then his dragon mother licked his face and said, "Of course. You have a big day ahead of you today. You know what today is, right?" Agron then rubbed his eyes and grumbled, "First day of school?" Agron's dragon mother then nuzzled her snout on his head and said, "Of course it is. Do you know why I'm sending you to school?" "Is it because I need to learn to deal with other people that aren't dragonborn?" "Yes, although there is another thing as well." Agron then groans, "What is it?" "It's about the other half of yourself, the dragon half. You see, at your age, your dragon magic greatly increases in strength, and if not properly trained, you could seriously hurt yourself or someone else. So you're saying I need to learn to control my power? Why not unleash it on the Zalshuran to force us to live underground in the first place?" "Son, I know you've been upset with our kingdom being taken over by the Zalshurans, but they're not bad people. Please, won't you give them a chance?" "They had their chance and they decided to invade our country. Now the royal family we serve is nothing more than a laughingstock for all of the Zalshurans to scoff at. Sometimes I wish the Americans would just come over that wall and kill every last Zalshuran in this country." Agron's dragon mother then grabbed Agron with her paw and pinned him against the wall, snarling, "That's a horrible thing to say, Agron. I raised you better than that." Agron then trembles in his mother's grip and couldn't speak as his mother's breathing slowed, and his mother said to him, "I'm sorry I yelled at you, but this swallowing in your own sorrow needs to stop. Now pack your things or you're going to be late for school." Agron then trudged over to his belongings and took almost everything out of his room, except for a picture of his mother and father. When Agron had arrived at his school, Tatsu ran up to him and affectionately squeezed him with the biggest smile on her face. Then she happily said to him, I'm so happy we're training together. My mom and dad are also master dragons, so we'll be learning from the best. Agron then gently rubbed the top of Tatsu's head and said, I guess that means I'll be staying at your house for a while. You bet. Agron and Tatsu then go to her house for training in dragon magic, and her father, Ignatius, the fire-breathing elder dragon, let out a puff of smoke and asked, What new meat has come to my doorstep? Then Ignatius slides the back of his claw of his index finger on Agron's chest as he trembles while tensing his muscles to hold still. Then Ignatius takes in a breath of air and says, I smell fear within this one, but when I am finished with you, I shall remove that fear from your heart. That is to be your first lesson, child. Tatsu then looks at Agron, trembling, and laughs. Loosen up already. I'm getting stiff just looking at you. Ignatius then grins, showing his massive interlocking teeth, and says, Your soon-to-be adopted sister is making a joke. Laugh already. I'm not going to hurt you. Ignatius then taps Agron's chest with the back of his claw and says, Perhaps you will find my mate less terrifying. Ignatius then grabs Agron in the palm of his paw and puts him down in front of his mate, and his mate asks with a gentle expression, Is this the dragonborn we'll be raising from now on with our hatchling? Ignatius then looks at his mate with confident eyes. Yes, and we will be raising him to the best of his ability. His mate then nods and says, Come now, child. Let Mama take care of you. Ignatius' mate then picks up Agron and puts him on her giant lap and gently rubs his back with one of her claws and says to him, Don't be afraid, my child. Mama will always be here for you. Even if you're not my hatchling, I will love you just as much. Ignatius' mate then gently hugs Agron against her giant chest and puts him down and says, I promise I'll raise you to the best I can. Tatsu then taps her foot, saying, Can we save the lovey-dovey stuff for later? Agron hasn't even unpacked yet. Ignatius' mate then replies, Sure thing. You two go do whatever it is you need to do, and I'll make you your dinner. Agron and Tatsu then unpack in Tatsu's room and go to sleep in each other's arms.